The night my husband passed away, I did not say a word about the $28 million property portfolio sitting under my maiden name, nor did I mention the high-end commercial tower downtown that I owned outright. Instead, I stood in my own kitchen 3 hours after his funeral, loading dishware with trembling hands, while his family gathered behind me like a firing squad. His daughter-in-law, Victoria, did not even wait for the last guest to leave before stepping forward, crossing her arms, and demanding that I start packing my bags because the family leech was no longer welcome in their home. I turned around slowly to face them, expecting my stepson, Brandon, to step in and defend the woman who had helped raise him since he was 12 years old. Instead, he stared down at the floor tiles, completely silent, while Victoria informed me that my 38 years of marriage meant nothing because I had never held a real job or contributed to his father's fortune. She told me I was 64 years old, unemployed, and belonged in an assisted living facility rather than occupying a spacious family estate. I looked at their cold, calculating faces, felt the heartbreak of betrayal mix with a quiet, icy resolve, and simply agreed to leave the next morning without giving them the dramatic fight they were clearly anticipating. That night, I packed just 2 small suitcases, leaving behind my designer clothes, my expensive jewelry, and 38 years of memories for Victoria to catalog in her head. I checked into a modest highway hotel under my maiden name, paying cash for the week so I could vanish entirely from their sight while I set my response into motion. My first call was to Standard Legal Counsel, a trusted family attorney named Arthur Pendleton, who had secretly managed my personal estate assets for over 15 years without the family ever realizing it. When Arthur arrived at my room the following morning, I instructed him to initiate full legal transfers of all accounts and prepare for a formal confrontation, giving the family just enough room to get comfortable in my house before bringing their assumptions crashing down. Over the next few days, I watched from tinted car windows as moving vans backed into my driveway, with Victoria ordering workers around as if she had already inherited the entire property. My phone blew up with demanding text messages from her, insisting I return to explain confusing financial files they had uncovered in my late husband's desk drawers. They were looking at superficial consulting accounts worth practically nothing, completely unaware that the real deeds, stock certificates, and asset documentation were sitting safely inside a private vault downtown. While they celebrated their quick victory and planned how to divide their imagined inheritance, I spent my afternoons meeting with wealth managers, securing structural deeds, and preparing for the mandatory estate reading Arthur had scheduled for Monday afternoon. When I stepped into the corporate law office on Monday morning, wearing a tailored dark suit and my grandmother's pearls, the entire family was already seated along one side of the conference table like a military tribunal. Victoria gave me a smug, dismissive look, entirely convinced that I was showing up to beg for a small monthly allowance from her husband's inheritance. The estate attorney opened the folder and read the formal terms of the will, which allocated $50,000 to each child while leaving the remainder of the estate entirely to me. Gasps echoed across the room, and Victoria immediately exploded into a rage, screaming that the outcome was completely impossible because I had been nothing more than a financial parasite who lived off her father-in-law's hard work. That was the exact moment Arthur stepped forward and quietly dropped a thick stack of certified property deeds directly onto the center of the conference table. He calmly explained that my late husband's personal consulting business had generated less than $40,000 a year, and that every major asset they thought belonged to him had actually been funded and owned by me since 1995. Victoria's face went entirely pale as she picked up the deed to the very house she was currently living in and read my maiden name printed clearly as the sole owner. Arthur then systematically listed my commercial buildings, investment portfolios, and the $28 million Soho loft property, bringing my total personal net worth to over $47 million. I looked at their terrified faces and informed Victoria that since she had formally evicted me from my own property without any legal standing, she had 72 hours to pack her belongings and vacate my house before I filed criminal trespassing charges. Her arrogance shattered instantly, turning into desperate pleas about how we were all family, but I simply picked up my handbag and walked out of the room without giving her another second of my time. Within 2 days, her own parents discovered the truth about her cruelty, reprimanded her severely in front of the entire family, and walked away, leaving her with no support system left to rely on. 6 months later, I received a call from a downtown hospital explaining that my stepson Brandon had been in an auto accident and had listed me as his primary emergency contact. I walked into his hospital room to find him broken, humble, and deeply remorseful, admitting that his marriage to Victoria had completely collapsed after her lies were exposed. He broke down in tears, apologizing not for the lost money, but for standing by and allowing his wife to throw away the mother who had loved him unconditionally for 25 years. Looking down at the young man I had helped raise, I chose to offer him a fresh start based on honesty and hard boundaries, knowing that real strength lies not in bitter revenge, but in standing firmly in your own worth.